by the King of France's decision. That one critical thing is who Anne of Brittany, Francis, Duke of Brittany's daughter, is going to marry. Because here too, just like with Isabella of Castile, just like with Mary of Burgundy, Francis, Duke of Brittany, only has one child, and it is a girl. It is Anne of Brittany. And so she is the prize that the kings of Europe want, on the presumption that they will, by marrying her, gain control over the territory of Brittany. So that's what her father had to concede, was at that treaty, because of his defeat in battle by Charles VIII, and then very shortly after he had made that concession, he fell off a horse and died. So Anne of Brittany was on her own, basically fending off the monarchs of Europe for the next couple of years. And so, after an approach by Maximilian, whose wife, Mary of Burgundy, had died in a horseback riding accident as well, Anne agreed to be betrothed to and then to marry in 1490 Maximilian, the Holy Roman Emperor. But of course she did so even though that was against the terms of the Treaty of Le Verger. And so that meant that Charles had a perfect excuse for declaring war against the both of them, against Maximilian and against Brittany, because he said, of course, that the terms of the treaty had been destroyed, had been broken by the agreement between Maximilian and Anne. So he besieges one of the main towns in Brittany, Rennes, and it falls to him. After his victory at Rennes, Anne of Brittany felt compelled to surrender to him because she was still in the territory of Brittany and was personally at risk and had no way of raising enough troops to defend herself, in part because, you'll notice what time this is. What's Ferdinand of Aragon doing in 1491-92? Oh, he's reconquering Granada. He's busy. Okay, and Maximilian, as it turns out, happens to be defending his eastern flank against the Hungarians, so she can't get reinforcements fast enough to defend her claim in Brittany. She refuses, however, to go off into exile in Austria, probably into a nunnery, and she refuses to marry anybody who isn't royal. So even though she's surrendered, she's made a stand as to what she's prepared to do to resolve matters. And so Charles VIII decides that the only way around this, the only way to resolve this, is to break his own engagement with his longtime fiancée, Margaret of Austria. Margaret of Austria has been living in the French court in preparation for becoming Charles's wife since 1483. If you look at these dates, that means she's been living in the French court since she was a toddler, essentially, or at least, a preschooler, since she was 3 years old. She is, at this point, 11 years old, and she is the daughter, of course, of Maximilian. So Maximilian had already given her to the court of France to become the queen of Charles VIII when Charles decided to break that engagement with Margaret of Austria and instead to marry Anne of Brittany himself, which he did in 1491. All right, so what that means is that by the end of 1491, beginning of 1492, Charles has essentially suppressed the Duke of Orleans, defeated him in battle, imprisoned him, has acquired the territory of Brittany by virtue of having married the sole heiress to Brittany, Anne of Brittany, and in a subsequent couple moves, then concludes peace treaties with the main combatants, Spain in the south, Maximilian, England. I'm looking here for where, oh, I guess I didn't give you the names of those. Okay. What he does in England in 1492, which Knecht goes into in a moment there, is he concludes the Treaty of Étaples, where he pays off the English with a huge sum of money in exchange for taking over and essentially occupying all of Western France except Calais. So he essentially gains all of this disputed territory in exchange for leaving England with that little bit, plus a lot of cash. He concludes the Treaty of Senlis, Senlis, with Maximilian of the Holy Roman Empire, once Maximilian has gone and occupied Franche-Comté. And at that moment, he returns the territory of Franche-Comté plus the territory of Artois, up here, to the Netherlands, right here, in exchange for gaining chunks of the territory here in Burgundy, up in this area, Burgundy and Picardy, which were, after all, technically claimed by the Holy Roman Emperor. So he had to give up borderland territories, but managed to consolidate some of the territory in here that had not been French territory up to this point. Last but not least, he concluded the Treaty of Barcelona with the Spanish in 1493, and in that treaty he conceded the territory around Roussillon to the Spanish in exchange for a peace agreement that the Spanish would not invade here, which they had just been about to do. So, remarkably enough, Charles VIII, because of the happenstance of when people died, of how people did in battle, of how treaties were negotiated, managed to go from being the object of the Mad Wars and a symbol of the weakness of medieval monarchy, to the Breton Wars, a symbol of the intervention of foreign powers and the instability of feudal territorial entities, to, because of these happenstances of battles and marriages and deaths and agreements, a moment when by 1494 France was substantially more consolidated on many of its fronts as one territory, one kingdom. Remarkable. There's just one little problem.